And in the research that I've read, I understand that the more books a child has, the longer that they will stay in school. So that book ownership really is important.
It is.
And for the littlest ones, we think about those babies that are really just awakening to the world. It's daunting, again, for parents to know what to do with a book. So it's one thing to get the books in the mail, but how are we helping parents to understand what they need to do with those books?
Well, that's where I think story time comes into play, and where we model how you read a book to a child, how you talk about books, how you experience books, sometimes how you even taste books, right? Yes. I mean, for babies, that's why board books are made, right? Because you like to eat them. But I think there's so many ways that our story times kind of model that in terms of what you do when you read a book. And, I've always had questions, well, my kid doesn't like to sit on my lap and listen to a book. And not all kids do. I had 2 boys. One of them could sit on my lap for hours and listen book after book. The other one didn't like it at all. And I finally became more comfortable with knowing that if I read a book to him while he was playing in the room, he was listening. It's just a different kind of listening. And so don't be worried if your child doesn't just want to nestle into your lap and sit there for ages reading a book. Some kids have that attention span to do that. Others don't. Doesn't mean they're not listening. Doesn't mean you should stop.
That's such an important point, because so many of us just have that image, or we see those images of this, beautiful, cuddly experience, and not all children are going to be doing that, nestled in your lap and looking at a book. So what are some of the tips that you might give parents for sharing books with little ones? Very specifically, I know, like even talking about the cover of a book.
Talking about the cover, talking about the title, talking about who the author is, talking about how you open a book, talking about the way that print goes from left to right. There's so many things that you can talk about. Talking about the end and how you open the book and turn it over. I mean, there's some kids that don't have any experience with that. They get to kindergarten and they don't even know how to open a book.
It's true. I have seen that. And we also know from research, this is my favorite party trick, although it's not quite a party trick, but a baby that's been read to consistently by their 9th month, if you hand them a familiar board book upside down and backwards, you know what they'll do, right? They're going to flip it around to the right way because they've had that experience of looking at the book. So those really important skills that we don't even think about as adults, those come into play those very first days and reading the book and all of those things.
One of the other things I like to remind parents, we do a lot of programs at the library, summer reading, winter reading, where they're counting books or they're counting the minutes read, or for our 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten program, where you're logging your books. And some parents say, oh, but my kid likes to read the same book every night at bedtime. And I said, that's fantastic.
That is fantastic.
And I said, I know it gets tiring after a while for you as a parent, but really hearing the same book really is a great literacy builder, because they actually, by memorizing that book, start to connect those sounds to those words and letters on the page.
That's amazing. And we know that that love for reading, that love for books, that love for learning really does start in those early storybook days.
It does.
Building Blocks, the podcast, is a co-production of Lakeshore Public Media and First Things First Porter County. For more information on Building Blocks, including this podcast, as well as the television show, visit lakeshorepublicmedia.org/buildingblocks.